Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
It's time for the Sports Blitz, the only live-streamed local sports show in Arkansas, with all the latest on the sports stories that matter to you. Live from the Lions Den Golf Club studio, here are your hosts, Mark Freeman and Weldon Braxton.
Welcome into a busy Wednesday on the Sports Blitz. Welcome into the Cogswell Motors Studios. Mark Freeman, Weldon Braxton, Maddie Lassiter, here to bring you the latest in local, statewide, and national sports. We're going to hit plenty of stuff today. We're going to look at the NBA, the NFL, college football. I read an interesting article, and I know you're probably getting a little tired of hearing on all the sports shows across the country about the University of Texas and their coaching search. Get that in there. Yeah, you can see it. I read an interesting piece this morning from somebody, I don't even really know where he's from or where he is, but he has some information, looks like inside information, chatsports.com exclusive, why Texas was so sure they'd get Nick Saban. It was by their staff. Apparently nobody wanted to put their name out there with it, but we'll talk about that. We'll look at some local sports, and we're going to get through our NFL power rankings and much more. Weldon, we've got a busy show today.
Really a busy show today, Mark. It's good to be here. I'm feeling a little bit better. You know, I was under the weather on Monday, but I'm good to go now, and it's a good thing because we do have a lot going on. You mentioned NFL power rankings, a lot of things shaking up in the NFL, a lot of division races still up in the air. The coaching carousel is still in play as well. You know, last year we saw 8 openings in the NFL. This year we didn't think we would see as many, but now if you scan down the league, you'll see a few more openings that'll possibly open up in the NFL. And, of course, the big cloud, Mark, you touched on it, the Texas Longhorn job. Interesting article about Nick Saban we'll talk about, lays out a timeline as to how it was plausible, and dare I say it's still plausible that Nick Saban could be the head coach at Texas. We'll get into that and more. College basketball, we haven't hit on it much, Mark, this year. It's still early, non-conference, but a lot of things going on, some really good heavyweight matchups. I don't know if I can remember this many heavyweights and upper-tier teams playing one another at this part of the year. It seems like every other night we talked about the Florida Gators are playing somebody of note. Kentucky's playing a tough schedule as well. And speaking of those Wildcats, you know, how do we feel about them? This was a team that was thought to possibly be undefeated. Some people were saying, could this team go undefeated, 40-0, all the way to the national championship? They've already taken a few knots on their head. The Harrisons, Julius Randle, company, Cauley Stein, and Poitras coming back, not looking like a lot of people thought. So I can't wait to get into that and a lot more.
Man, there have been some big matchups so far this year. You've already had Kentucky, Michigan State, Kansas, Florida, Kentucky, Carolina. Who played Duke? And it was a big game.
Duke.
Kansas, Duke. That was the game. Man,
Duke, Arizona.
Huge games already.
How about Arizona and Michigan? Arizona down at the half, number 1 in the country, come back and win against Michigan
on the road.
Yeah,
that's college basketball. To me, I love following the game, but I'm kind of like you guys. I'll follow it toward the end of the season. Right now, I'll follow it, but I won't watch every game. But my favorite 2 days in sports, in all of sports, just for the sheer volume. It used to be, New Year's Day they would have good college football bowl games, and the New Year's Day bowls. But now they've moved everything to the 4th, 5th, 6th through the 9th, or whatever. Is when the good games are. So New Year's Day isn't as big a day as it used to be. But now, to me, the best day in sports, the best 2 days, the first 2 days of the NCAA tournament when you've got basketball, when you've got 2 days, 16 games apiece, and they're all, you never knew what was going to happen. I remember sitting in high school, and it was when the internet was just starting up. No, I'm joking. It was when it was when our dial-up took 5 minutes to refresh the score. So I'd be sitting there. Yeah, exactly. I'd be sitting there, hitting the refresh button and waiting until and they would pop up with the screen and all the games, and I just watching those games in high school, and even now, it's the most exciting time of year. Can't wait for March, but I'm not going to wish away December, January, February, because we've got some good basketball, some good football. I mean, we've got a national championship game here in a couple weeks to start previewing.
We really do, Mark, and I cannot wait to get into that Florida State and Auburn. Gus Malzahn leading his Auburn Tigers. But you mentioned college basketball and the NCAA tournament. I normally don't like a lot of things in sports to change. I still haven't completely recovered from the NBA no longer being on NBC. That was a big deal for me. That's gone. I mean, we don't get to hear it anymore. I was not a big fan of ABC. I've warmed up to it a little bit, but still not a huge NBA on ABC fan. If college basketball were ever taken off the CBS networks and its affiliates, I don't know what I would do with myself. But one element of change with the tournament that I do love is now that every single game is broadcasted on a network. It used to be, CBS and Greg Gumbel would chime in. Greg Gumbel in New York, let's take you out to Spokane for this game between, Arkansas and USC, and we'll take you there. Greg Gumbel doesn't take you around anymore because you can watch on every channel now. So that's one of the evolutions with the tournament that I like.
Yeah, and speaking of the NCAA tournament, got Arkansas Razorback news as they're projected. Now you can look at projections all the way through the season to be in the field as of right now. That basically means that their resume and schedule right now with what Arkansas has accomplished is enough to get them mentioned in the discussion for the NCAA tournament come the end of the season. And as Corey Williams just pointed out on Twitter, I kind of like the way he worded this. He said, as of right now, it's nice to know you just need to take care of business instead of fighting an uphill battle. If Arkansas can take care of business and in what I consider to be a relatively weak SEC this year, take care of business enough to be in the top 4 or 5 teams, they've got a chance to be in the NCAA tournament.
All right, and I get the mindset. I don't disagree. I just think it's so early.
Yeah,
when you talk about having to just take care of business, I could see if it were the last 4 or 5 game stretch of the year, you needed to get warm and win a few games. There's so many things could happen. Arkansas could finish in the top 3 of the SEC. Arkansas could finish in the bottom quarter of the SEC. There's just so many games to happen. I never been one to hold on to the mentality of, there's something out there, you just have to hold on to it. I've always been one to believe you have to go pursue something. That's why you hear when coaches win championships, they say, we're not the defending champions. We're going to pursue this next championship. Yeah. The one we got hanging in the trophy case, that one's not going anywhere. They make a new one. So with Arkansas basketball, I like that they're in the conversation. I like the fact that they've done some things resume-wise. But when you have an 18-game league schedule and so many months in front of you, it's a lot that can happen, as far as Arkansas goes. But the question mark is this team good enough to navigate through the schedule? I mean, we brought up something the other day with Arkansas basketball that I think a lot of people forget. Arkansas was a 10-win SEC team last year.
Yep.
I mean, we talk about their ups and downs. We talk about their struggles on the road. And, yes, aside from a win at Auburn, they really didn't beat anybody on the road. But at the same time, they're a team that showed you some things. I don't think there's any debate that this is a better Arkansas team. Maybe there is. Maybe you think B.J. Young and Marshawn Powell, losing them was just going to cripple this team. Haven't seen it so far. I think this is a better Arkansas team. So, yeah, I do look forward to them making a tournament pursuit. I just think it's early to look at it from the standpoint of, we just got to hold on to the rope. I think it's early.
Yeah, it definitely is early, but it gives us something to talk about. Arkansas takes on Tennessee Martin tomorrow at Bud Walton Arena, 7 o'clock tip. So at least they've got another shot at a patsy to get their ducks in a row. Yeah, that 72-43 win over Savannah State looks a lot better on paper than the first half of that game looked on the court. Arkansas looked pretty terrible from what I've gathered, and they're going to have to play much better and more consistent. Kai Madden, 21 points. I look to see him continue his growth this season. We'll talk a little bit Arkansas Razorback basketball here in just a little bit. But while we're thinking basketball, let's look at our Peters Family Living local sports run through the schedules of some of the local teams that we cover in the area because we've got a lot of basketball action coming up. There's still some holiday action to take place, and you can go to rivervalleyleader.com and find some of the basketball information that we've been given. I know Pottsville, Clarksville, Russellville, and Dardanelle do a pretty good job of sending in their information, but if you want more information from your school, just have your athletic director tell your coaches or just tell your coach directly to email mark@rivervalleyleader.com, or if that doesn't work, Mark Freeman at live.com with any information, photos, scores, stats, quote, anything they want included. I'd love to have information from each school in the area. That's the goal, to get there. But looking at the basketball schedule for Friday night, you've got Atkins hosting Charleston. That's a big one for those guys. You've got Danville hosting Lavaca. Clarksville will play on Saturday in the Little Rock Hoops Classic. They'll take on Monticello. They played North Little Rock last year in that tournament. It was a tough task for them. Dardanelle is at Elkins. Hector is off until January the 7th. Man, that's a long off stretch for them. Dover is hosting Mena. Lamar is going to be hosting Mansfield. Looks like Pottsville has, after that long stretch that they had, they've got off until the Alma tournament on December the 27th. So a couple days after Christmas, they'll be back in action. Two Rivers is hosting Paris in boys action. Russellville, I think they're going to be off for a little bit. Yeah, they're off to the 26th after the Cyclone Classic. Girls and boys both got big wins last night, so that's a good one for them. Western Yell County off till January 7th, and that about does it for our coverage area right now. But we've got some basketball action going on Friday night. It'd be a good night for local teams to be at home.
Yeah, it is good for local teams to be at home. And, as you turn the corner, Mark, in the calendar and the calendar year, we look ahead to 2014. This is the time where basketball teams are really trying to get it going. I mean, we've talked about Clarksville's schedule. They still have some events to play. But a lot of the teams like Russellville and teams like that are playing, isolated games, trying to get better. We talked to Coach Mann on Monday. He's very excited about his team, the way they're shooting the ball. We've talked about Pottsville recently and how I think we believe they'll be a better team later in the year than they are right now. So, again, there's good basketball in the River Valley. I think we'll have some teams that will make at least some appearances in the state playoffs, if not make a run.
Yeah, I know. I made a comment last year, just stepped out there on a limb and said, Pottsville Apaches are going to make the state tournament in basketball. You remember it?
I remember that.
They go on and win the state championship.
They did more than that.
I do know that they're going to make a run this year again. I do know that they're going to make the state tournament, and they're going to make a nice run. I know. They've got some district and regional action to take place before that happens. They had a tough loss, 4-point or 6-point loss. I'd have to look real quickly on Monday night to Subiaco Academy on the road, but the Pottsville Apaches are coming together. Now, Michael Perry had an off game, his first one of the season really so far against Subiaco, but on the road in a tough environment. It's sort of happens every once in a while where they don't quite play up to their standards, but they're starting to come together. Got some young guys who are able to contribute along with Perry and Travis Cole and those guys, so they're looking good. And like we mentioned, the holiday classics get you prepared for conference action, and then you see some of these teams come together and gel. And Coach Thurman, he was very adamant in his quote after a loss on the road to a conference opponent that put you at 0-2 in the conference. He said, I can see that we're starting to come together, and he expects them to play well down the stretch, knowing that they've got a return trip from Maumelle and Subiaco at the end of the conference slate as they kind of flip the schedule over.
Right.
They're sitting in a pretty decent spot here, knowing that they've competed well against those two teams on the road.
Yeah, they have, Mark. And again, we're talking about a team that, of course, won the 4A state championship last year, a team who's not quite returning everybody, even though they're returning Michael Perry. It's just going to take some time. And Coach Thurman, you have to put some trust in him. You know he can do the job. You know the players are going to be prepared. And the thing with high school basketball, and obviously it varies from area to area, but for the most part, high school basketball, if you have a group of kids who at least have some degree of talent, Pottsville, they have more than some degree. They have some good players, and you coach them, you put them in the right position, you just concentrate on doing things right, you'll have a chance to compete, no matter who you're playing, especially in Class 4A. And so I think that's the focus for Pottsville.
That's definitely the focus right now. We've got plenty of stuff left to hit today on the Sports Blitz. We're going to go to break real quickly. When we come back, we'll look at the NFL. We'll give you our power rankings, little college football, little NBA today, just to sort of whet your appetite for everything in the world of sports. I need to say one more time, congratulations to the Morrilton Devil Dogs on a 5A state football championship. 27-24 winners over Batesville. And also let you know that the Arkansas Tech Golden Sons and Wonder Boys are in action this week. Thursday, the men will host Angelo State. That game has been moved from 7 o'clock to a 5:30 tip. So if you're going to get over there to Tucker Coliseum to watch them play, you're going to have to get out there a little earlier. Both teams fell last night in tough games. The Golden Suns lost to Rollins College, the number 16 team in the country, on the road, and the men lost by 1 point, missed a 3 at the buzzer to have a chance to win the game. So you get out and watch the Arkansas Tech men on Thursday against Angelo State at 5:30. We've got plenty more on the Sports Blitz. Stay with us.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
here's what you missed.
Updated news.
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
Developing stories.
It's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
And weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on. KRK4 today.
Over 69 years of treating you like family, Peters Family Living's main goal is customer service. That is their promise to their customers. They offer in-house financing on furniture and appliances and a 30-day money-back guarantee. For a friendly, no-pressure atmosphere, visit Peters Family Living today at 201 North Arkansas Avenue, Russellville. Online at petersfamilyliving.com or call 479-968-2929.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
Welcome back into the Sports Blitz on a Wednesday. Plenty more Sports Blitz for you. As a matter of fact, I'm still writing down notes in the break, so that's always a good thing. Actually, it seems like we have better shows when I don't have anything written down and we can just go. We can just talk. But we got several things that we need to hit today, so we wrote down some stuff here on the Sports Blitz. Mark Freeman, Weldon Braxton, Maddie Lassiter, appreciate you taking time out of your busy day this holiday season to join us, whether you're watching via RiverValleyLeader.com live or whether you're watching the replay. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Let's look real quickly at college football. Probably the biggest story in college football right now. Sadly, it's not the national championship game. A couple weeks out from that game taking place. And I know that we're a year away from the playoff beginning, and this conversation will be, I don't want to say null and void, but it'll be a lot less drug out because you'll have football games to actually talk about. But Nick Saban and the University of Texas, is there an interest, is there not? And you're saying, what? He signed his contract with Alabama. You know what they say about contracts. They're made to be broken. That's just the way things are in the world these days. So the question still remains, with Nick Saban's signature still drying on an Alabama offer that offered him about $7 million a year, will Nick Saban be the next head coach at the University of Texas? I'm reading an article I mentioned earlier from chatsports.com. Okay, first off, it's an article by chatsports.com. Had you ever heard of them?
I have not.
Had you ever heard of them? Me either. Okay, so it also isn't signed by any individual. It's Chat Sports staff. For all I know, it's just one guy calling himself the staff. I may or may not have been guilty in the past of writing articles for RiverValleyLeader.com and putting River Valley Leader staff so that I didn't have to sign my name to it. Full disclosure. So if I'm looking, and I'm not saying that it's sometimes you, for your own safety, you write an article about somebody going to jail. You don't want so and so coming after you. You put River Valley Leader
You just
staff
want the
to
whole office to get targeted.
So exactly,
not you.
yeah,
Okay,
exactly. I like it spread out across everyone, not
go.
just me. So reading this article, you have to take it for what it's worth. But reading this, why Texas was, let me see, I'm going to quote it right. Why Texas was so sure they'd get Nick Saban. It reads to me, this timeline, from January of 2013 on down to just the other day, in middle of December, like a person who had a whole lot of information, or somebody who has the biggest cojones in the world to just make up bold-faced lies. Lots of compelling evidence to say, Nick Saban was on board, and the only things that it would take was for Texas to fulfill XYZ, one of them being a 10-year, $10 million a year contract, guaranteed whether he coached there 7 years, 10 years, he's getting $100 million. 2, a $4 million housing allowance. 3, unlimited assistant coaching salaries. And 4, the use of a private jet whenever he felt the need. And also, very, very importantly, he wanted Mack Brown to sign off on this, be at the sort of changing of the guard, be at a torch-passing ceremony at the introduction of Nick Saban as Texas's next head coach. And by all accounts in this article, that's all it would take. That's a lot. That it would take to get Nick Saban to come coach at Texas. Just no controversy. Well, as we can tell, Mack Brown didn't quite hold up his end of a bargain that he probably didn't have anything to do with. So why would he? But long story short, we still don't know as of right now. And if you read the last line of the column here, the article, it says, one of Saban's close associates reaches back out to Longhorn boosters and says, quote, had to sign the extension, too much heat. If you guys can wait, let's talk after January 2nd. Still, to me, Weldon, seems like this is not a dead issue.
Doesn't seem like it, does it? I think the bigger issue when you look at this story, we're trying to decipher how plausible this is. Do we think there's some legs to this story? Are there some legs to this timeline? And I think for this to be true, Mack Brown is a different kind of guy than a lot of people had him out to be. Because if this is true, if this entire timeline is true, then Mack Brown is more of a shrewd operator than I think a lot of people gave him credit for. Good old Mack may not be just good old down-home Mack, because you look at his part in this situation, the fact that he didn't resign according to the timeline in terms of what he needed to in order to get Nick Saban at Texas. He held out, and you look at that early in the week, it's really a whole week's time of the rumors around Mack Brown following that loss to Baylor. Would he step down? He's expected to step down. Remember, the report came out early that he was going to step down. He came out, and his people said, that's not true. Then I'll decide by the end of the week. If this story is true, if this timeline holds true, then what it's suggesting almost to me, Mark, is that Mack Brown intentionally held out, intentionally waited for his resignation because he knew the heat would be turned on Nick Saban, as the article suggested. Because if you're Nick, you're answering questions every day. And remember, Nick's on the recruiting trail. A lot of these coaches use this time to recruit. So you're out there, you're in the line of fire. You're talking with parents, you're talking to family, you're talking to coaches of these high school players and what have you. You're getting ran into by media. You're facing these things each and every day. Are you going to Texas? Texas said this, and rumors are you're going to Texas. Are you going to Austin, Longhorn? Blah 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 blah. And so that's that heat, and the heat does get turned up to the point to where you either have to jump to Texas or you have to sign that extension. And the opportunity to jump to Texas wasn't there because Mack Brown hadn't resigned yet. So I take from this, Mark, and I'll be interested to see what your big picture take from this is. But mine is Mack Brown is a little bit of a shrewd operator if all this is true.
I've never been a big Mack Brown fan, never been a fan of the University of Texas, but good for you, Mack Brown. He didn't have anything to lose in this, knowing that he was getting pushed out, knowing that he doesn't need another dollar the rest of his life. So they offer him a $500,000 a year for however long contract when he's been making millions a year, $4.5 million a year, to be a special assistant. I'll just call him a fundraiser for the university, for the president. Knowing that he's going to get pushed out, why would he make it easy on him? They say in this article that he was not returning phone calls. He was just not playing nice. And, Weldon says he's a shrewd operator. To me, it seems kind of more like the jilted lover. He just doesn't. He's just like, you know what? I don't want any part of this. And if you want me to help you and you're going to treat me that way, I don't want anything to do with it. I'll screw up the whole plan for you guys. I know you got it planned it out behind my back months ago. I don't want anything to do with it. And especially knowing that, he knew that he had the chips in his side. He had everything on his side of the table when they're playing against Baylor. Win that game, you win the Big 12. They can't fire you.
Right.
They can't rightfully get rid of you then. So he was this close to being able to stay on, and he's just like, all right, well, I guess if I'm going to step down, I'm going to do it my own way, for one. And for two, you guys have been trying to stick it to me. I'm just going to stick it to you on the way out.
Well, here's why I say it's shrewd, because that's not the image in which Mack Brown tried to portray himself. And because you even look
and he
at his
still doesn't get a bad look from this.
He doesn't. You read his exit letter and the statement he made from that. He said, look, when I got to Texas, this program was divided. My wife, my family, our staff, we helped unify Texas over the last 16 years. I'm noticing now that my presence is causing division once again. That's why I'm stepping down. So he's coming across in his statement as though he's Mr. Loving of Texas, wants the best for him. No hard feelings, and he's sticking them at the same time. And that's good old Mack Brown. That's not the story that was out about him. That's not the story that statement tells. But at the same time, I agree with you, and I would agree with him if this is truly how he felt in terms of not wanting to help this process along. And of course, Jimmy Sexton, Nick Saban's agent, the shrewd. You talk about a shrewd operator. That's what that man is.
Boy.
He knows how to get dollars for anybody.
The plane is on the tarmac. Let's get Houston Nutt 12,000 raises and 4 different jobs.
No, he knows how to do it. He's with players, coaches. He knows how to do it. Represents a ton of people. But part of the stipulation, you look at those lists, were Mack Brown had to endorse this move. Mack Brown needed to endorse it. Obviously, that didn't happen as well. So Mack Brown, I think there is some jilted lover from Mack Brown's part. I do think that he was strong in his position to not want to help things along, and that's just a little bit different from the I love Texas, I don't want everything divided, I want what's best for the university. Just a little bit of a diversion from that.
So we've mentioned before, just the other day, the coaches that we would like to see mentioned. I mentioned a guy who is so far off the radar, I've literally not heard anybody else say his name, in Mark Richt at Georgia. Now, does that mean he's going to be the next head coach? Not necessarily, but it means, to me, a guy I believe his career at Georgia has run its course. Not saying that he's going to be fired or resign tomorrow, but if he were to take the Texas job, and if he were to be contacted, I know he's probably a ways down the list too. It wouldn't surprise me, but if Mack Brown is not going to be the head coach, if Nick Saban is not going to be the next head coach at the University of Texas, who's going to be? From what I've seen now the last couple of days, they're actually betting odds on who the next head coach at the University of Texas is going to be. You can go to Vegas, you can stand at a window, and you can put money down against the house on who's going to be the head coach at the University of Texas. People, get a life. Charlie Strong, right now, the odds-on favorite to be the next head coach at the University of Texas. What do you think?
Well, I think Charlie Strong's done a very good job at Louisville. You look at, he took over for Steve Crackthorpe. Obviously, things had not gone well. He's gotten Louisville solid academically on and off the field. They're doing things right. They've won games. He has, one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Teddy Bridgewater. With Charlie Strong, obviously, you question the sizzle. the sizzle may not necessarily be there. Louisville, in spite of the success they've had this year, was a somewhat disappointing season for the Cardinals. They were supposed to run through that AAC conference, go back to a BCS bowl, and possibly win a second straight. They didn't quite get it done. Charlie Strong, he's probably on the list. I just can't imagine he's one of the early phone calls that Texas is making.
No, it seems like they're going to put, I made the joke the other day. They've got their first three options are Nick Saban, and then anybody else. They're still trying their best to get Nick Saban. And if that article that we read earlier has any shred of truth to it, it's going to be after January 2nd before they make that decision.
It could be after January 2nd, Mark. That would be, at this point, with this article being out and everything else being out, if Saban still were to take that job, it would be something. Another name that's mentioned, his name gets mentioned a lot now with jobs, is James Franklin at Vanderbilt. What he's done at Vanderbilt has been nothing short of amazing. You're talking about the perennial SEC doormat. Now, when you play Vanderbilt, you not only know you're getting a game, but you might lose a game against the Vanderbilt Commodore, something we thought we would never see. The thing with Franklin, I don't dislike him being linked, but I would be careful because I found, Mark, that some coaches are just better when their backs are against the wall, when they're an underdog. I'm not saying James Franklin couldn't handle Texas, but there are a lot of coaches who have done more with less, who have built their name on doing more with less, that once they do get the keys to the Ferrari, they're kind of wobbling all over the road with it. They're not quite steering it the way you would think they would.
You're talking about a coach who might have been yelling about intramurals, and you're talking about some of those guys?
Hey, Dan Hawkins, he's somebody on that list, but we've seen it, Mark, in basketball. You've seen it, too, where you think, oh, man, he took this team with nothing but 2 stars and mediocre facilities and high academic standards, and he won 8-9 games with them. Oh, just wait till you give him Texas and that money and those resources and that talent. Oh, he's just going to take them to the next level. And he kind of doesn't. Some coaches are 8-4 coaches. You give them 5-7 talent, they go 8-4. You give them 11-1 talent, they go 8-4. Sometimes that's just what they are. I'm not saying that's Franklin, but I would just be careful of all of these more with less type coaches.
Well, to me, the University of Texas goes after the biggest of big, and I heard Rick Schaefer talking last night. And I emailed Rick Schaefer about his interaction with the University of Texas back in the day as the Arkansas SID, and it was really cool. He sent me back an email just talking about how Texas he doesn't say a mean thing about anybody, but the University of Texas is the only one. And he talked about how they just felt like they seemed like they felt like they were better than everybody else, and it was just a tough deal for him as an SID to have to deal with the University of Texas. And apparently nothing's changed. They're trying to go after the biggest name. Jimbo Fisher, another one. If he wins the national championship, right then he is automatically, or Gus Malzahn, the biggest name in college football at that moment. Now I know Nick Saban is much more revered, but It would be a "what have you done for me lately" situation, and you'd have the national champ.
And then you mentioned a couple of those coaches. Let's not act like a contract, and this is what I want to talk about, contract extensions. Yes, they carry a lot of weight. Yes, they do have value. The only value a contract has is it ensures the school's going to get more money once you leave. If you're Auburn, for instance, you signed Gus Malzahn to an extension, but he can still leave. The only thing you did by signing Malzahn to an extension was making sure that Texas or whoever else paid you more money.
Protect yourself.
Other than that, nothing else changes. Jimbo Fisher signed a deal. Same thing can happen. Florida State just makes more money. Art Briles at Baylor, who is a lot of people on Art Briles, high school Texas legend, coaching that state. The high school coaches would love him. The state of Texas would love him. He just signed a deal with Baylor. Doesn't matter. That just means Texas pays Baylor more money. They can still get it.
That's all it is. All right, we got to hit a break. We've got plenty more today. We're going to look at our power rankings right after the break.
Over 69 years of treating you like family, Peters Family Living's main goal is customer service. That is their promise to their customers. They offer in-house financing on furniture and appliances and a 30-day money-back guarantee. For a friendly, no-pressure atmosphere, visit Peters Family Living today at 201 North Arkansas Avenue, Russellville, online at petersfamilyliving.com, or call 479-968-2929.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
Here's what you missed.
updated news,
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
developing stories,
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
and weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on KRK4 today.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
Welcome back into the Sports Blitz, second half of our show. We hope you've appreciated. We appreciate you joining us, and we hope you have enjoyed the talk so far. We've got a little local out of the way, and we've talked about the University of Texas. God, we've talked more about Texas in the last month than I ever care to talk about Texas. I hate the University of Texas. I'll just give him another one of these right there. My dad's going to be proud. Watching the thumbs down, the fingers, horns down there for the University of Texas. Let's look real quickly at the NFL. I haven't looked a whole lot at the NFL this week because the Dallas Cowboys choked away another win. They snatched defeat out of the jaws of victory once more. And they've put themselves in a position to where if they beat if they can beat the Redskins this week and they can beat the Eagles on the final week of the season, they can be right there in the playoffs. They're 7-7 right now, but the NFL is shaping up well to be a fun stretch run, and we've got our power rankings as is our Wednesday tradition.
Yeah, Wednesday power rankings here today. Interesting shakeup because now there are teams that are starting to lose and they're losing more consistently. So one team loses, you have to put them down, and somebody else wins, you put them right back up. But I had a hard time with my power rankings. I have two teams tied at number 5. You know, I usually do my honorable mention, and I'll do the same here. My number 6 team or honorable mention team, I have to talk about the Miami Dolphins. First of all, what they did defensively against New England was impressive. I know Gronkowski didn't play, but still, a lot of weapons out there for New England. You look at Amendola, you look at Edelman, Shane Vereen, obviously Stephen Ridley running the ball. They still have weapons. And what they did against Shane Vereen was becoming a monster out of the backfield, splitting him out wide, all these different things. They did a good job. Ryan Tannehill's playing solid. He has a little bit more of a rapport with Mike Wallace now. That group with that defense, Miami's a team that's coming. They're playing pretty well right now. I have a tie at 5, though. This is my power rankings for sure. I have a tie between the Carolina Panthers, who defeated the New York Jets. The Jets, we know they're a mess offensively. And the Baltimore Ravens, who won on Monday night. Baltimore is a team that started to come together. Joe Flacco, no, he is not elite, but at the same time, he has shown you he is capable of coming through in big-time moments. You cannot take that away from him. And as the season goes on, stage gets bigger, games get bigger. this offense is playing better. They need to keep running it better because that was a problem for them. They couldn't run the football. But when they have some balance, that defense, no, it doesn't have Ray or Ed Reed anymore, but that defense is playing well this year. They've played well as of late. That's a team you need to keep your eye on, the Baltimore Ravens. Number 4, I got a team who they weren't really in my power rankings the last couple of weeks because they weren't playing well, but I got to give it up to the Kansas City Chiefs. Here's a team who offensively they have found some things. Now, granted, I know they played against Washington the week before last, and they played against Oakland this past week, but still, this offense has shown some life. Jamal Charles is big time. Even going back to the Denver game in Kansas City, Alex Smith started throwing the ball down the field a little bit more. Now it's ironic. The defense has been a little bit of a problem for Kansas City, but if they get healthy, and they should get healthier, and this offense starts creating explosive plays, the Chiefs can be a team to be reckoned with. I have them at number 4. My number 3 team, look, tough break, Thursday Night Football, but I got the Denver Broncos at number 3. And I just think defensively, they're going to have to get a little bit stronger against the run. Ryan Matthews and company just did a number on them, kept the ball away from Peyton Manning. That's going to be a problem in the playoffs if Denver doesn't get it corrected. And then Denver offensively, they've got to be able to figure out how to beat teams that are playing tight press coverage. When they get those issues straightened out, I think they'll be okay. But until then, I have them number 3. Number 2 has been a team that I've been a little bit iffy on because I'm hard on them. I'm always hard on teams that I have high expectations for, and that's the San Francisco 49ers, but they have won their last 4 games. They are starting to play that steamroller-type football that I'm used to seeing. Kaepernick doesn't look as lost as he did in the passing game earlier this year. They're starting to look like the 49ers, who I deem to be the most talented roster in football before the year. And number 1, Seattle, I almost said the Supersonics. I was that close to saying
Sean Kemp, Gary Payton, Detlef Shrimp.
Sean Kemp, Detlef Shrimp out there running around. But no, the Seattle Seahawks, this defense is something serious. They go and beat, well, I would say the New York Giants. It's some team wearing blue uniforms in New York because it's certainly not the New York Giants we're used to seeing. They get the job done. They're rolling. I don't hold that loss to San Francisco against them before because San Francisco needed that one from a standings and an emotional standpoint. Seattle is still in the driver's seat. Russell Wilson is playing some of the best football of any quarterback in the league. Forget young quarterback. He is balling right now. I like the Seattle Seahawks.
I've got basically the same 5 teams. I've got a little bit of a switch here in my power rankings. And I've got a team outside the power rankings that a lot of people would have in it for a reason I'll explain here in just a moment. To me, the NFC is deeper as far as teams that can compete for a Super Bowl berth. But the AFC, to me, is wide open as well. I do have the New England Patriots out of my top 5, okay? There's a reason for it. Gronk is such a huge loss, out for the rest of the year. I know they're 10-4. I know that something about, I don't know who Bill Belichick has pictures of, but they tend to get anything they need. If they need a call at the end of a game to sustain a drive, they'll get it. If they need to kick a field goal, if they need a tuck rule, if they need anything, it'll happen for them. But I don't buy it this year. I think the New England Patriots, they're honorable mention for various reasons, but I've got them out of my top 5. So at number 5, I've got the Kansas City Chiefs, partially because I don't think the other 3 of the other 4 teams in my power rankings are NFC teams. So part of the reason I've got them in here is because I don't think that they'll have I don't want to call it an easy skid. I don't think they'll have a tough road to the AFC Championship game. Because, I mean, think about it. If you had New England and Kansas City, and Kansas City has the home field advantage, who do you take in that game right now? I mean, knowing that New England doesn't have Gronk, you may still take Tom Brady because it's the playoffs. That'd be a tough game, though. My goodness, in Arrowhead, that would be a loud atmosphere. It would be cold. It would be awful for New England. I would favor Kansas City right now. So that's why I've got them at number 5. Number 4, I've got New Orleans. It's a tough NFC right now. I've got 3 of the other 4 teams, like I said, in my power rankings from the NFC.
New Orleans.
New Orleans at number 4, partially because, Seattle, San Francisco. Seattle's my number 1 team. San Francisco's my number 3 team. So New Orleans being at number 4 it just means to me that they're going to make it to the NFC, at least to the semifinals of this tournament, and they're going to make their way into the conversation because I've got San Francisco at number 3, Denver at number 2, and Seattle at number 1. The reason I've got Denver above San Francisco is because I don't know that San Francisco can beat Seattle, and they're going to have to play them most likely at Seattle. So, to me, it's just why put a team that probably can't make it to the Super Bowl because they'd have to beat the number 1 team. Yeah, no, that's sort of, and I'm not saying that San Francisco is not better than Denver right now because if you had to line them up and play them right now, you probably would take San Francisco.
It'd be a good game.
But Denver to me still looks like the best team in the AFC, so I put them at number 2 simply because I feel like they're a favorite out of the AFC to go to the Super Bowl. So it's sort of a up and down criteria. Sometimes it's a what have you done for me lately, and sometimes look at the rest of the conference, and rate them that way. So.
Is that your New Orleans? Is that your reason for New Orleans
being number 4? Yeah, it sort of is.
Because I thought about New Orleans. I was so mad about them the way they played at Seattle. Everybody gets beat at Seattle. They didn't even show up, and then to go to St. Louis and look the way they did this past week against St. Louis, I just could not forgive them this week. Maybe I can forgive them next week. Ooh, they just look bad against St. Louis. St. Louis is a good team too, but still.
I've got Seattle, Denver, San Francisco, New Orleans, Kansas City in my top 5 power rankings. You may agree, you may disagree. Send all hate mail to Weldon Braxton.
They like my power rankings. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, Lordy. We've got to hit a break because we have got plenty more left on the Sports Blitz. We've got to look at some Hogs information. Once again, congratulations to Charlie Partridge. Heard an interview with him yesterday. He is the new head football coach at Florida Atlantic University. We'll talk about his terms, look at Razorback basketball, and much more on the Sports Blitz.
Over 69 years of treating you like family, Peters Family Living's main goal is customer service. That is their promise to their customers. They offer in-house financing on furniture and appliances and a 30-day money-back guarantee. For a friendly, no-pressure atmosphere, visit Peters Family Living today at 201 North Arkansas Avenue, Russellville. Online at petersfamilyliving.com or call 479-968-2929.
Today, there are more than 20 brands of cars being sold in America. So to be noticed, Ford and Cogswell Motors have to go further than anyone thought we could. How does Ford stand out above the crowd? Not just with plug-in vehicles like the new 2013 Ford Fusion Energy that gets a projected 100 miles per gallon equivalent, but also with a line of gas vehicles equipped with the innovative EcoBoost engines combining power and efficiency, plus a full measure of technologically advanced features. We invite you to stop into Cogswell Motors today. We go further than anyone thought we could, so that you can go further too.
RiverValleyLeader.com is the #1 local source for instant news in the River Valley, offering HD video and live streaming along with top-notch coverage of all the news and events around the area. The River Valley Leader is the only place to go for all the information you need. Check out the newest local business featured on the site, as well as police news and coverage from important meetings, along with the personal stories, all at one convenient click. Check out RiverValleyLeader.com.
If you didn't count on KARK4 today this morning,
here's what you missed.
Updated news.
Police continue searching for suspects after a home intrusion overnight.
Developing stories.
There's another piece of presidential history turning up here in Arkansas.
And weather and traffic on the force.
Friday night, Saturday morning will bring us our next chance of rain.
Every 10 minutes.
Around the clock.
Making your day easier.
So rise and shine and count on.
Count on.
Count on KARK4 today.
Hi folks, Richard Roberts with Cogswell Motors in Russellville. You know, we've been in business since 1949. A dealership doesn't stay in business that long under the same ownership unless you're doing something right, and that's taking care of customers. We have the largest selection of new Ford, Lincoln, Mazda, and pre-owned vehicles in the River Valley. So if you want the most for your trade, the best interest rate on financing, and the best price on a new or pre-owned automobile, come to Russellville and see us. We're at 1900 East Main, or visit us on the web at cogswellmotors.com.
Well, it's a good time of year for us here on the Sports Blitz to talk some basketball. And we mentioned a little bit earlier about the heavyweight battles that have just taken place so far in college basketball season. And, we're a little bit away from NCAA tournament talk, but it's never too early to start looking at the landscape as a whole in college basketball. The tournament, obviously 3 months away from now, but things are starting to take shape a little bit. I've noticed, Weldon, that the SEC doesn't look to be all that great as far as depth goes, but they're very top-heavy with Florida and Kentucky both looking pretty good early on in the season. We expected Kentucky to be really good. Florida, very well coached, man. They play the game the right way, and they've got some early big wins. They were a buzzer beater by Shabazz Napier away from being undefeated on a 4-game tough stretch against top competition in the country right now. So we've got a lot of stuff going on early on to just sort of frame the college basketball season.
Yeah, a lot going on, Mark, and we said at the top of the show, these heavyweight matchups, and it's really important for the SEC, Mark, and you mentioned Florida, because the SEC got in, 3 teams last year? I mean, it was an embarrassment as far as the SEC's presence in the NCAA tournament, and, at their annual meetings, they'll have the coaches meetings somewhere nice in Florida, away from the wives and all that stuff. They sat down and decided, look, we got to do something about getting teams into the tournament. One thing we have to do is we got to schedule better, because there's not a whole lot of greatness within us as far as our teams. So we got to go out and we got to go play people. We have to go improve ourselves in the non-conference. I think you've seen the SEC do a great job of that. You mentioned Florida. They played Wisconsin. They had some people, missing in that game. So even though they lost that one, I don't really count that one against them so much. As you said, Shabazz Napier came up with the heroic shot to beat them up in UConn. And then playing Kansas at home, jumping on them, that's a huge win for them. And then against Memphis to be able to play that one in New York. So the Florida Gators are a team. They will be a force to be reckoned with, not only in the SEC but nationally. The Kentucky Wildcats, Mark, and they're a team that a lot of conversation. Is this team going to get it together? We saw the group with Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, Anthony Davis, that group get it together as freshmen, and they end up winning a national championship with the backing of some veterans like Terrence Jones and Deron Lamb. You look at this Kentucky team right now, which way is it going to go? I don't think, no matter what, I don't think it'll get as bad as last year with Archie Goodwin and company, Nerlens Noel getting hurt, Will Cauley-Stein, that freshman group. I don't think it'll get that bad. But at the same time, you hear things about this group not buying in defensively, this team not quite buying in terms of what it takes to be successful in college. And what I'm wondering, Mark, is at what point, what do we have to see to quit holding on to this notion of, just wait till March, Because last year we were supposed to wait on Archie Goodwin and company come March. And come March, they were losing to Robert Morris in the NIT first round. I don't think this team will be like that, but do you see anything, Mark, from Kentucky's standpoint that make you think they may not be this dominant team later in the year?
Yeah, I see Arizona. I see Syracuse, I see Wisconsin, I see Michigan State, I see Louisville, I see Duke, I see a bunch of teams that I think are better than Kentucky. Now, maybe later on in the season, I like Julius Randle. I like, is his name Nick Young? No, Nick Young's the one for the Lakers.
The jacks-up shot. James Young?
James Young?
Or something
yeah, we're still learning these guys because they're new. Yeah. The shooter, the lefty, I like the left-handed shooter. What can I say?
Yeah.
But I'm not really sold on the Harrison twins. One of them's a whiner and one of them's all right. Cauley-Stein looks like he stepped out in 1992 with that haircut. So, Kentucky, to me, they'll be there in the mix, and I don't think that they'll win the SEC because I think Florida's better. Have you seen Patrick Young? The dude looks like he's chiseled out of freaking granite. He is huge, and he's probably the only one athletically that I think can handle Randall. So,
Look, I got Patrick Young being a first-round pick in the NFL, because that's the way I'm. Because Patrick Young looks like a dude. He is.
He is a man. So Kentucky will be in the conversation. I don't think that they're going to win a national championship. I don't even really think that they're going to be in the conversation for a Final Four down the stretch. Maybe it's a failing method to go after these one and dones because it worked. It worked for them to win a national championship. But at the end of the day, you're seeing teams that are sprinkling in those guys with great players around them. Arizona with Gordon, they've got a talented roster around him, and you can see it's working out pretty well for them. Number 1 in the country, 11-0. Michigan State, that toughness, you saw it in the first game of the year. Now Kentucky's talent brought them back, but at the end of the day, Michigan State, well-coached team with veterans and guys who knew how to win, pulled it out. I've heard good things from Wisconsin. Listened to a guy on the radio yesterday say Wisconsin's going to be a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament coming up this year. Duke, they'll be right there as far as in the conversation. North Carolina, if this crazy NCAA investigation ends, they may be able to gel as a team and play very well coming down the stretch. So, no, I see a lot of teams above Kentucky keeping them out of contention for a national championship, and Florida to me is the best team in the SEC.
And really, there are some good teams, Mark. You look at the expectations. Again, there was a lot of 40-0 talk, greatest recruiting class of all time.
Yep.
I'm with you on the Harrisons. First of all, anytime John Calipari recruits a point guard, you start thinking about the Derrick Roses of the world, Brandon Knight. Even though Tyreek Evans didn't play point guard till late that year at Memphis, you start comparing them to those guys.
John Wall.
Yeah, the John Walls. Andrew Harrison, the star point guard of this team, he's not the caliber of athlete of any of those guys, especially Wall and Rose, who are superior athletes. He's not in that group, and so he's not an excellent shooter, so he's still kind of finding his way, with this team. But I agree with you. It's almost like the 2010 team. Remember the 2010 team with John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, all those guys? A lot of talent. They couldn't shoot. West Virginia jumped in a zone in the Elite Eight and pretty much held Kentucky scoreless for the game. And I see that with this team. They do have some guys who can shoot. Young can shoot. Aaron Harrison can shoot. But they don't have that consistent knockdown guy. And I said at the time, losing Kyle Wiltshire will be an issue. I know a lot of people swept it under the rug, saying, they've got all these freshman superstars coming in. But you look at Kyle Wiltshire, stretch four. He's savvy. He's not just a guy who can make shots. He was a legitimate shooter. I think they're missing a presence like that on this team. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm not drinking the Kentucky Kool-Aid, though.
We'll find out a little bit more about them. December 28th at home against Louisville, number 6 team in the country, comes to town. We'll find out a little bit more about Kentucky, and we'll continue to follow the NCAA basketball conversation throughout the year. We know it's a little early. Speaking of early on in the season, the NBA, we've seen a couple of teams really come to the forefront out of the Eastern Conference. Now, the West is deep, and it always is. You've got the San Antonios, and now you got Golden State jumping up in the mix. Houston getting Dwight Howard, and the Clippers always right there in contention in the last few years. But in the East, you've seen 2 teams rise to the top clearly.
Yes.
I mean, just above and beyond everybody else. It's the Miami Heat, and the 2-time defending champion Miami Heat, and the Indiana Pacers. Last week, you saw the Indiana Pacers knock off the Heat. A lot of talk, a lot of chirping early on in the season. They play again tonight. LeBron James got a little bit of an ankle issue right now, sprained ankle. We don't know if he's going to play, how well he'll play, if the Heat even care. Does this kind of game early on in the season matter to you?
It doesn't make a whole lot of difference. I think you look at it from an Indiana Pacers standpoint, you might can see it just because they're the team who's steadily filling the well of confidence. They're the team who got a lot of confidence from taking Miami to a Game 7, which was the most fraudulent 7-game series I've ever seen. That was a 6.5 game. Nobody on this earth thought Indiana had any chance whatsoever to win Game 7, and Miami showed you that by blowing their doors off in 5 minutes. But they took them to 7 games, and then, of course, the win this year in Indianapolis. Indiana's the team who's trying to fill up their well of confidence to prove to themselves that they can play with Miami and beat them in the Eastern Conference Finals, because they talk a lot. They talk like, we're confident, we know. But beating the Miami Heat is really what's going to give them that inner confidence. I think they're going to look to play well in this game. But I think Miami, they've seen what happened in Indianapolis. When a team is challenging you and you're the sitting champions and a team is coming after you, you have a tendency to say, look, it was cute what you did. Let me put a little bit of a button over your mouth. Be quiet tonight. We got this. I don't think it'll be a total blowout, but I have Miami in control most of the way and winning a somewhat competitive, somewhat close game.
See, I can see it happen one of 2 ways. I can see Indiana winning because Miami doesn't care or LeBron isn't quite healthy, or I can see Miami just obliterating Indiana tonight on their home floor in Miami, just because of the fact that, like you said, all right, shut up. When we feel like playing, we'll turn it on. At the end of that game last week, Miami wasn't able to come back and win the game because they tried to flip the switch. And sometimes it works for them, sometimes it doesn't. It's all right in the regular season when they do it. I told you before the show, I think there's 4 games on the schedule that matter to them, and it's three to 4 games on the entire schedule. They're in the playoffs in the Eastern Conference Finals against Indiana, which is almost inevitable at this point, where they'll play either 3 games or 4 games at Indianapolis. If they can win in Indianapolis a couple of those 3 to 4 times, they're going to be fine, and that's what they know right now. They know there'll be games, and you'll watch throughout the season where Miami they'll geek up for one game, they'll beat somebody by 40, and then they'll just the next week they're just like, well, we know we still got it. So it just seems to me that this game early on, we'll see. It'll be one of those 2 ways tonight. We'll be talking about it on Friday, looking at either a big Miami Heat win or a who cares, they lost type performance tonight from the Heat.
What won't we see? You covered all your bases just now. What do you think won't happen?
I don't think that Miami will win a close game. I think it's 10+ or Miami loses.
Okay.
And I don't think that they'll get blown out, though. So I think it'll be a close Indiana win or a 10+ Miami win. That's where I think it'll be. Less than 10 Indiana win or more than 10 Miami win. That's where I'm going tonight for that one. We'll talk on Friday about our early MVP. Guys like Damian Lillard throwing his hat in the ring for the MVP, throwing his whole wardrobe in the ring for early MVP right now. Who are the favorites? Miami and Indiana have stepped up in the East, but we'll look at the West. Also talk about the Hogs. Hopefully can get a win over Tennessee Martin. If you can't, you got some problems. Thursday at 7 o'clock, Bud Walton Arena. And then we'll look a little bit more at the Razorback football coaching carousel, as they're going to have to replace Charlie Partridge. But Brett Bielema says he's got 3 coaches as far as a coaching list of people that he would like to replace any coach at every position at all times. We'll talk about that and much more on the Sports Blitz on Friday. So for Weldon and Maddie, I'm Mark. So long. Thank you for staying with us as we ran out of time and went a little overtime today. We'll be back at 11 o'clock on Friday at rivervalleyleader.com.